Welcome to Behind the Screens, Conversations with Background Screening Pros. I'm Les Rosen, your host, and I'm excited to have you here. On this podcast, we chat with the people who know the background screening world inside and out. Executives, industry experts, legal pros, and more. We dive into their personal stories and insights to give you a real look at what's happening behind the scenes. Whether you work in the screening industry or are just curious, Behind the Screens bring you the real, unfiltered conversations from the people who make it all happen. Stick around for stories you won't hear anywhere else. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this edition of Behind the Screens, Conversations with Background Screening Pros. And I am delighted to have a person who, in the dictionary, his picture would be under the word background screening pro. Perry Morgan has been in the industry, I think, longer than I have. I've known him, I think, forever. And we'll go down a little bit of that down memory lane. But Perry Morgan, welcome. Happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, certainly. I'm very excited to find out more about you. And I think this will be a very interesting podcast recording. So first things first. What are you doing now? What's your current role? What you like about it? What's happening now with Perry Morgan in the background screening industry?
My current role is similar to what I did at all the companies I worked for. I'm a consultant, and I'm helping people grow their business, hence my company name, Helping You Grow Your Business.
Okay.
I like working with startups, small to medium-sized companies. I enjoy identifying new products and services, or repackaging products and services for these type of companies to bring down their operational costs and enhance their value, and then partnering with other wholesalers, vendors, consultants to bring excellence to the industry and position new up-and-coming CRAs into a space of excellence.
You have the background to do all of that, and that's what we're going to talk about now. So why don't you tell us about your career path, how you got from your first job in the screening industry to where you are now?
My first job in the screening industry was an accident because I worked for Pactel Cellular, and we had a very small fraud department, underfunded. My job was to provide leads to the agents. One of the things I noticed in my process was a pattern of behavior, and when I tied that pattern of behavior to our fraud department, they tied it to LAPD, and they were able to catch people who, back then they used to steal cell phone numbers or ESN.
Oh, right.
And then they used to clone them, and they'd run guns, drugs, so on and so forth.
Wow.
Me identifying that pattern made our farm department guy very famous in our industry. So I was doing it not knowing, and that's how I originally started.
I did not know that. That's very interesting. Nowadays, you can call anywhere, but those are the days where long distance was really an issue, before phones.
Yeah. And so that was my first entry, and they wanted me to work in the fraud department. I'm like, nope, I don't want to do that. I like sales. This is what I want to do. Fast forward, I was working for a company, an agent of Nextel, kind of doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. I left them, and I applied for a job at MCI. They gave my resume to CDB Infotech. At the time, had been acquired by ChoicePoint. And they hired me, and I got 3 raises in the first 3 months, because how I was taking the time to educate people on what I was learning.
So you're CDB Infotech, and that's a name that's long gone from people's memories, but that was an original, way back in the day, an original firm that ChoicePoint bought. And of course, ChoicePoint's now been bought, so things happen all the time. So you were CDB Infotech and then ChoicePoint, right?
Correct. And then I left ChoicePoint, and I went to work for HireRight.
And that was the original HireRight out of Irvine with Eric. I can't remember Eric's last name now. Not the current HireRight, which, there's been mergers and acquisitions and so forth, but that was the original Irvine-based company.
I left there. I did extremely well there. I made too much money in sales because I was onboarding people at a rate. That's basically what happened. So when they changed the comp plan, I said, okay, I need to do something different. And that's when I went to NBD, National Background Data, which was part of First Advantage via SafeRent. All of those people.
But not originally, though. Before that was a standalone.
Yes, but I wasn't there then.
Okay.
I knew about them. I would call every day asking about their data. Because I came from ChoicePoint, I understood data. And that's people really weren't using databases or didn't understand how to capitalize on them to protect their clients as effectively as we do today. So I left HireRight, went to work for NBD, and then I left NBD, went to work for Innovative, and then Innovative was acquired by Appriss. I was at Appriss for a while, and then I left there before the acquisition was done with Equifax, and now I'm doing consulting.
So you're another person that has taken the train ride of acquisitions and private equity and changes of ownerships and mergers and so forth. It's you go back to the MBD days with Bill Bollinger then, right?
Yes, Bill Bollinger and the original crew back there.
Right. So we'll skip a little bit of the order then, but what was interesting about those days is that, and you know this better than me, is that NBD was not, I don't know if it was a first, but it was among the first group offering what we now call the National Criminal Database or whatever name you call it. And that wasn't, as I recall, something that was universally thought of as being, a viable product, right, at first?
That's true. Our industry operates, I say in fear, but because we don't know about it, we're like, that's not going to work. It's not any good. And we still do that today with newer products, but people didn't see the viability behind it. But it helped. Back then we did the county of resident or all the counties based off the trace. And that was it. We missed all the travel spots. And then all of a sudden, a light bulb went off in the industry. Well, wait a second. We're identifying criminal records in Texas and places they never went via the database. And all it was a pointer. And people didn't use it as a pointer. They use it as the end all to be all. And that's, those are the growing pains you have to go through with the new product.
Right. Yeah. And for those that are sort of new to the industry, obviously a national criminal database is not a primary source end user. It's a pointer tool, it's a secondary tool. It's a source to tell you where else to search, because under the accuracy rules, you actually have to have the current up to date records and so forth. Right.
And I love the way you use that. The primary source. People don't use primary source as much as they should. They'll use a substitute, but they don't always go to the primary source.
Right.
And I'll be honest, you're one of my mentors in that space, so I appreciate it.
Well, I remember I had a great lunch with you. I was an expert witness in a case in near Jackson, Florida, Appalooka County. I can't pronounce it. Appalooka County?
Gainesville. That's why I know.
Oh, right. Okay. And I was out there testifying, and you and I went to a barbecue place for lunch. It was great.
Yep, that's true. It was great, and I enjoyed time with you. And from that point on, I always hunted down great barbecue so I can tell you about what you run across.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, okay. Well, I mean, you've certainly experienced a lot in the industry. What do you like most about your career in the background screening industry? You had other careers, you had the chance for other careers, but you stayed with background screening. What do you get out of it? Why do you like it? What appeals to you about it?
It's always changing. Always changing. It's compliance kicks in. Something has to change. New information's available. How do you use it appropriately? And has it changed? People get smarter about changing their date of birth by one day or the year of birth. Identity theft. Now we have technology coming in place. And how do we make it better? How do we use it appropriately? Not just to make money, but use it appropriately to protect a business, the consumer, and the applicant. How do we do that and be reasonable about it? That's what I love about it. We get to change people's lives for the better, identify people who are not looking to help change people's life for the better.
Yeah. And we're able to provide, what we call, actionable and accurate information to employers so they can make appropriate decisions, based upon fair chance hiring and second chance and discrimination rules. But you need information to make those decisions. And it's always important to keep in mind there's a job for everybody, but not everyone is entitled to every job. And so we're just trying to help employers intelligently place people. I see you at the PBSA meetings, and you've been involved in PBSA. What role has PBSA played in your career? In the Professional Background Screening Association to make sure we're not just using alphabet soup.
So before PBSA, all my information I sought was from you. You're that person in the industry. You're that person in the industry that I knew because Les Rosen and all the people in my circle, you're Les Rosen.
Okay.
Ron LeShare, Dan Etzel, those people and the people at Hirite, they thought highly of you. All right. And I believe back then you're the competition, but they thought highly of you. And so that's what I said, this is great. And then I go to work for NBD and I do my first PBSA. And I thought I was oh my God, what just happened? Because we come together as a group,
Right.
identify opportunities to be better, ways to better understand the industry, and collaborate as you're being competitive and to regulate our industry for the good without trying to control how people run their businesses.
I mean, how long have you been going to the PBS annuals? It's been a while.
Since 2005.
Wow. I think the first one, I should know, I was there. I was in charge of it. It was 2003, Arizona. So you started going about a year or two later.
Yeah, well, was Arizona was the first one, or was the meeting in New Orleans to talk about putting it together?
Well, there was a couple of meetings to talk about putting it together, but the first actual meeting after the membership drive and an election of board of directors, that was Scottsdale, I think at the Hilton in Scottsdale, right?
Correct. I didn't go there. I went the first one I went to was in 2006, actually.
Okay, so
I went to the Brownstein conference. That's when I first met you. No, I think I met you in New Orleans, I believe.
okay,
And that's when a group of people were getting together to talk about
right.
PBSA. And that's when that's the first time I met you. Then I met you at the Brownstein conference.
Right. And for those of you that are listening in, Brownstein, we'll have to have Steve as a guest on the podcast, but Steve actually put together the first industry conferences that predate PBSA. And it was out of those conferences, out of his efforts and people getting together, that really led to an appetite towards an association. So sometimes it's confusing as to, did I talk to you at a Brownstein conference in Clearwater, or is it a PBSA conference? And, in the early days, those kind of get mushed in your mind a little bit. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, PBSA is quintessential to my growth in the industry.
Okay.
It's a cornerstone for my learning and being surrounded by people who fed into me. People think I have all this intelligence and brilliance, but it's information that's been provided from people like you, Les Rosen, Kirsten, Melissa Foyles. What's her name? I'm trying to.
Pam Devada, maybe. Pam.
That is the name I was trying to. Yeah. People like that. Larry Henry. So I've been surrounded by this wealth of knowledge pouring into me, and I'm just a reflection of all of you guys. So I'm grateful.
Well, I think you're more than a reflection, Barry. You take it all in, and then you internalize it, and you know this stuff. Right. And you have your own take on it, your own ability to communicate it. So give yourself credit. You're one of those folks that you really know your stuff. So I always admired that. When you go to the PBSA meetings, do you attend the sessions? I assume you attend the sessions and listen to speakers and so forth.
Yes, I try to attend the sessions and listen to speakers. Yet the last two conferences as a consultant, I've missed out on all the sessions I want to go to because people want to sit down and talk with me. And I've had people, can we get together as a group? I already have a meeting. And they'll come back together, 3 strong. Hey, can we all meet you? We have the same. And we'll chat in that manner. But the sessions to me are extremely valuable. And I think they're a must. It's part of the growth and the understanding of where the industry is going and shifts and changes. And it's great information for us to process and, talk about the different ways of using it. And instead of following a herd in other industries would do. But we're a very opinionated group, and we wrestle until we come to a point where, okay, this is a better norm. Right.
Yeah. And unfortunately, at the PBSA conference, if you can't make a particular session or there's 2 you want to go to, you can normally see the online PowerPoint, at least get the essence of it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I actually call it PBSA binging.
Right.
I'm not watching that on PBSA. I'm a binge. That was good.
Right.
And you can play it again. And that's the beauty about it.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that shirt thinking, God, I would love to have an old NBD shirt, but I'm sure that's a collector's item, so I'm sure those aren't around anymore.
I have another one, but I think it's too big for you because I was much bigger then. This is big.
Oh, well, I don't want to take the shirt off your back, buddy. So I appreciate it.
They're hanging in the closet. I have this issue with just keeping on. I have shirts from Choice Point, NBD. So at a conference every once in a while, I'll take a few different shirts and I'll wear them.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, you're going down memory lane for some of the old things that used to be. Well, here's what I like to do now. I like to leave background screening and that kind of stuff and really just talk more about Perry Morgan. So,
Okay.
Perry, at this point, I want to ask you, tell us outside of background screening, your hobbies, your interests, what's important to you outside of work, what you do for fun, apart from background screening. Tell us about Perry Morgan.
I love watching people. I think people watching is one of my best hobbies. Whether I'm walking, I can be playing basketball and I'll stop and pass the ball off just to watch somebody because they were interesting in the way they moved or they looked, that type of thing. God has instilled in me this ability to step out and try to help other people for the better, whether it's improve the quality of their lives or just giving them an ear to listen.
That's wonderful.
Feeding the homeless, things along that line. I'll speak on occasions just to people that feel they don't have hope. And hopefully they will see that hope is all around them. It's how we step into it and not allow the distractions of the world to stop us from doing the great things that have already been embedded in us.
That's wonderful. That's your own personal ministry then. It's your personal outreach. Right.
Yeah. And I, as a child, my grandmother used to take us to feed the homeless. Used to take us to convalescents home. I said, I will never do that again. Never say never. Because
Never say never.
I've done all those things.
So, and is that something that you do on a formal basis or sort of ad hoc, or how do you go? How are you involved in all that?
Ad hoc, people will pick up the phone and call me, asking to speak. People will just out of the blue say, "Hey, something tells me I need to talk to you," and I'll have a conversation.
Right.
That type of thing. So, yes, that's what I tend to do.
Oh, that's fascinating. And I would assume from that as members of the screening industry, we're concerned about second chance and the idea that a criminal record does not define what a person is, and everyone's entitled to individual assessment. But for you, it's more than just a philosophy. That's something that's part of your makeup, this idea that people need a second chance and people need the ability to get back on their feet.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. We're dealing with survivors of sex trafficking, and when you grow up, I grew up in South Central. Some people had to do certain things just not to get beat up or robbed every day. So that type of trauma causes people to operate in a different space.
Right.
When people are exposed to something new, like with people involved with survivors of sex trafficking, they did drugs, they stole, they did all these things they had to do in that world. And now there's an attestation to where they can attest to certain crimes, yet they're not removed out of the courts. But that is a life change. And I think second chances are viable. And the interesting thing is most of the people that get caught really would love a second chance and an opportunity to do something different. Yeah, it's the people who never got caught. They don't even try. They continue to do the same thing again and again until they get caught. So I like the fact that PBSA sponsors a second chance program.
Right.
And more and more of those coming about. But like you said earlier, some people, although they want a job, they may not be deserving of that job just because of how they continuously operate in what they do. And they're dishonorable behaviors.
Right. So that's interesting. On one hand, you really enjoy the background screening industry, which helps employers make the decision. And also you're very sensitive to the issues and challenges of individuals who have these records and what their life situation is like. And their need to be able to provide for themselves and their families and so forth and rejoin society as viable people.
Yep.
And it's interesting, when you say South Central, to me, having grown up in L.A., I assume you mean South Central L.A., but it could
Correct.
be South Central in a different state. Okay, all right.
South Central Los Angeles, yes. Vermont and Manchester.
All right, I know exactly where that is. All right. Not too far from USC, right?
Not too far. I used to walk to USC.
Okay.
Wow.
And for those listening home, some people think USC stands for the University of Southern California. As a UCLA grad, USC obviously stands for the University of Spoiled Children or the University of Second Choice. But we don't want to get in that kind of conversation.
Not at all.
In those years where USC beats UCLA in the big game, then I'm a little more critical. But let's be regardless of that. So we have a couple of minutes left. Let's do the speed round before we wrap up. Perry, we have two speed round questions for you that we went over a little bit earlier. Number one, tell us about actually, before we do that, I actually skipped a question, and I think you may have done this already, but before we get to the speed round, is there anything you want to add that I like to ask people? Tell us, one thing interesting about yourself that you feel is important for people to know that people may not know.
I have 4 children in my downline.
Wow.
Perry.
Fantastic.
My oldest son is James Perry Morgan, JP Morgan. He's not wealthy yet. My twins are Perry and Perry. And then my daughter, I said, please don't name any of your kids Perry. She had a daughter, and she named her Perry Christina Jr.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
So Perry Morgan lives on. Well, congratulations.
Yes,
That's wonderful.
Well, they can use my credit cards and things. I didn't think about that back then. So having children, think about that down the road.
All right, Pops. Well, let's go to the next speed round question. All right. We have a couple minutes left, so we're going to just pick your brain for a moment or two. But real quick, particularly with your perspective and the number of things you're interested in that you've had a chance to do, off the top of your head, what do you think is a top issue or maybe issues that the background screening industry needs to address in the future, or will face in the future?
I think technology is one of the top, but that's too vague. So if I'm going with the speed round, I believe providing solutions that help new background screening companies come into play, diminish their operational costs, and giving them more viable, actionable information. And then I believe continuous monitoring is going to really take a foothold. And there is no ultimate continuous monitoring solution out there. There's too many flaws in it. I think that's something that needs to be put in place. And then drug testing needs to be enhanced with an influence on under the influence. This person is not fully functional. He's under the, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but.
No, but you're saying that to differentiate between a person who has a history or a use versus that use impacting them, so they're influenced by it or their behavior is influenced by it, depending upon the job they're in, the safety factors and so forth.
Well, no, a test that will allow them to tell, oh, they're impaired. This person's impaired at this point.
Right.
You can't measure may not be able to measure the impairment, but the simple fact that they're impaired, and if they're working on heavy equipment, being impaired could be dangerous around them.
Exactly. And continuous monitoring it's one of those things that's been around for years, lots of issues and lots of practical issues. So, but I'm sure as with many things, people are, including you, I'm sure, are looking for solutions to streamline it and use it, and make it actionable and accurate and non-discriminatory. So yeah, it's not, some people, it's just not as easy as saying, oh, we'll just keep on monitoring the workforce. That's like, all right, that's the tip of the iceberg. That doesn't help.
It also has to be compliant. And that's one of the that's bigger gaps in there also.
Yeah, exactly. I think you've already answered that, but how do you think new technologies will influence the work being done?
New technologies, impact of new technology, I'll start with blockchain. With blockchain, you can't remove information. That individual file, even though you have it blocked off, a smart attorney will come in and say, hey, I want that file. And you have to produce it, even though it's blocked off. So that's going to be a challenge. And then AI, eliminating the human aspect too early in this process might create other challenges. So how do you blend the two? Because many times AI is only operating how it's been taught.
Yeah.
And some of the things you can't teach our machine the instincts of a life learning overnight. It's still too early in the process. Right.
So yeah. And at the end of the day, I mean, particularly for folks that are data oriented, or tech oriented, it's hard to explain sometimes. There's still this idea of individualized assessment. There's still human factors involved. You still, at the end of the day, may have to justify to the EEOC or a jury or a judge why that decision was made. So you have to show that whatever your AI does, you have to prove its viability, and you've tested it, and so on and so forth. So lots of things there. It's just, none of these things are as simple as people think at first blush, I think, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing with AI, I think anything, just like a database hit, you get a hit in a database, you need to validate it at the primary source. When AI meets your criteria, you should have a body of people reviewing that to make, is this viable?
Right.
And how do you make sure it's fair and equitable? That type of thing. Because that just the AI disqualifying somebody falls under the alert of saying, hey, we found this information on you and we reported it. And if you have any questions, please let us know. So you can dispute the process. And if you don't have that,
Right.
now you're dealing with liability again.
Yeah, and we don't want to, in the 3 minutes we have left, go too deep into the FCRA and all those rules. But I think the lesson is, folks, be careful, because there's a whole lot more landmines out there than you might think there is. And eventually the plaintiff's bar will catch up with you on those. We'll find them. All right, well, we're just about at the closing point. Been a pleasure. Let me just ask you the last and final questions. I'll combine them. Do you have any advice for people entering the profession, or any closing thoughts that you want to share?
Yes. Our industry is right to run to. I believe it's another generation of people coming into the industry that can actually make it better. Mm-hmm. And when you come in, you really want to focus on compliance. When you do those things, those 3 things on top of, underneath everything else, you'll be successful. You'll diminish your liability, and you will actually create opportunities for other people. And my last closing thoughts, I believe this has been one of the best experiences in my life, and also it's the way I've established relationships. And I am thankful for you actually inviting me to a podcast to share. And I greatly appreciate it.
Well, Perry, I appreciate it. I think all the listeners will appreciate it. And folks, we've had the pleasure for the last half hour or so of talking to our good friend and colleague, Perry Morgan. Perry, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Anytime. God bless you. Thank you for everything you've done for our industry, and you have an amazing day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. That was yet another wonderful conversation with a background screening pro. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an update. And hey, if you got a moment, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It really helps get the word out. For more info, or to catch up on past episodes, or to make suggestions, or to suggest possible future guests, head over to our website. Once again, this is your host, Les Rosen, and it's been a pleasure to bring you another episode. See you on the next episode. Thanks.